So the next set of handouts that you have includes the calendar where we have indicated when we anticipate that we will be convening some of the different work groups between now and your November meeting. You've also got the consensus recommendations from your health advisors and your PE advisors. We did send you an email with this information and a notification that the consensus recommendations as well as the individual advisor reports were posted on the website. So that information is available for anyone who is interested. We did, as I mentioned, have that first advisor meeting. This is the first time that we've done this, trying to get that consensus to be able to provide that information to the work groups. And I think that those meetings went well. We did have several of you who joined us for parts of those meetings. And then after the advisors had an opportunity to meet and discuss their recommendations, we did facilitate a webinar between the content advisors and some of the representatives who will be on work group A, so that the advisors had an opportunity to speak more directly to the work group members. With respect to the health education advisors, we did provide them with the commissioner's recommendations that we had shared with you at the last meeting. We did share with them that we didn't hear any objections at the last meeting from board members about starting with that recommended structure for the health education standards. They were in general agreement with that structure. So we would anticipate that as we move forward with the first work group, that we would ask them to begin from the structure that was recommended by the commissioner, and then the additional recommendations for those potential strands that came from the content advisors. This would be the point in time where if you have additional guidance or direction that you want to provide to the work groups, that you let us know that, and then we will carry that message forward.
I'm just wondering if, I know Dr. Michael Love, I think, didn't come. Did we ever receive any input from him?
Yes, ma'am, that's a good question. So Dr. Love was not able to attend the face-to-face meeting. He was the only advisor who was not able to attend. We sent him the consensus recommendations from the advisors, and he did respond that he was in agreement with the recommendations, and so we did add his name to the document that identifies the advisor. So we essentially gave him that option to either say, I'm in agreement, add my name, or I'm not in agreement, don't add my name, and he was in agreement.
Yes, Mr. Alley.
And so, Monica, when we look at health education work group A, right?
Yes, sir.
So we're seeing that some districts have 2 representatives there. I think some districts don't have any. Is that a product of the number of nominees, or how did that break out?
Yes, sir. So, well, that's actually, I think, a product of the number and type of applicants that we receive.
Oh, okay.
So we do start with the applicants that we then hand off to you, ask you to either nominate them or not. Mm-hmm. The numbers have not been as high as for some of the previous subject areas, and I think that was something Shelley was going to make a plug for today. We've been putting the word out, trying to encourage educators, but in building these preliminary work groups, we didn't have quite the pool that would be ideal to build those committees, and so we're hoping that we will get more now that school's back in session, and we have an opportunity to get the word out, that we'll get more applicants. And what we do is Jessica and her team do a really great job of keeping very detailed notes. So if we have certain districts that have higher representation now, and certain districts that don't have any or have low representation, then we would look to make adjustments for that with future work groups. But certainly the more folks we can get from your area, the more we'll have to choose from, the better we will be able to strike that right balance.
Okay. And then a follow-up to that. So work group A is not necessarily broken down into elementary or secondary. They're looking at the body of the standards, I guess.
Yeah, that's correct. So we do try to have balance to the extent that it's possible on any committee, and we've attempted that here. As Monica mentioned, we don't have a big applicant pool to choose from, but we hope that that'll improve over the course.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
And some future work groups would likely be larger than this initial work group. And so we also recognize that some of the groups vary in size. I think what we're discovering is that we likely will start out with a smaller group to make some of the initial recommendations and end with a small group that will come through and make sure that there's consistency across the recommendations. But several of the work groups in the middle we would expect would be larger and potentially differentiated by grade band to the extent that that makes sense.
So on the Health Education TEKS Review consensus recommendations, this is what everybody agreed on? Or
Yes, sir. It's
Okay.
what the group agreed on.
where do you have what they didn't agree on?
So
I imagine there was some things they didn't see eye to eye on.
There, I don't believe, and I was not actually in the room for the last half of the meeting, but for the parts that I was there for, they were able to reach consensus. Some of the individual reports have additional, more detailed information in them, but we didn't experience significant disagreement.
Correct. So we gave both groups of content advisors an opportunity to develop a minority report or some document. Neither group thought that was necessary. I think they felt like the areas where they differed were minor and they're covered in their individual reports.
Okay. Are these, I guess, expert meetings closed as opposed to our regular work groups? Are
so
these meetings
this-
not open to people to
This
attend?
preliminary meeting was not open to the public.
Is there a reason why?
We were instructed that it was not to be an open meeting
By whom?
by the chair.
I sent a note to all the members to let
And I
everybody know
understand
that
we were
how you're going to
invited.
do it. Right.
I just wonder why you would close it out like we've never, I mean, we generally let people show up if they want and sit there quietly and
So,
listen.
Mr. Cortez,
Yeah, but
there have been, I just for everyone's awareness, there have been other instances where you haven't had open meetings. So most immediately, if you think about the reading language arts, where you had, we were calling them still experts at the time, you asked us to convene them for several webinars, and there were several work sessions that we had with them to try to get that document to have some consistency. None of those were open meetings. When we developed some of the text for the high school courses, those are also, they're smaller, they're more like work sessions with staff, and those have not been open meetings.
Yeah, but this is one of these topics that just seems to get a lot of negative press. I think the more transparency we lend to the process, the better. So closing a meeting doesn't seem like something that creates a significant amount of transparency.
Well,
And I got asked by several people, and I didn't have an answer. I knew that we were invited. I wasn't able to attend, but I knew we were invited. So I was just wondering what the rationale was. I didn't realize that.
Go ahead, Dr. Ellis.
I would want to say that I did drive to Austin to attend these meetings and sat in the back of the room, and I want to say I was extremely impressed with the experts that we had. They truly listened to each other. There were no extreme views being espoused, and as she alluded to, there was true consensus. I think whenever there's some disagreement on topics, they just worked towards a true consensus, and I was really impressed with the work by the entire group there.
Well, and that's good, but I think these meetings should be open. I'm glad that you got to see it, and if I had had time, I would have gone as well, but if there's organizations out there that want to participate or at least be sitting in the back of the room, I think they should be afforded the opportunity. It just lends more transparency to our process, and so I would suggest that future meetings not be closed out to anybody.
We always do what you instruct us to do. We do not make these decisions independent of this body.
Well, then I would just bring that up to this board, that I don't think we should close out any future meetings to any interested parties.
Any other comments? Yeah, Ms. Cargill.
Now we can ask you to ensure that the work panels do include I know it's in the content advisors consensus report, but about the Lyme disease or tick-borne illness and et cetera. Also, one of the documents that the commissioner's report alluded to in his bibliography is the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, their national health education standards. And I would like for there to be instruction to the work panels to take a look at those. I think they're very clear and concise and developmentally, mentally appropriate. And since I know they're part of the commissioner's report, so I hope that the work groups are looking at that anyway, but sometimes they don't always look at the source of some of the information since it's in the bibliography. But I think those are very good standards. They're done by grade, they're done by strand, and they're just very clear and concise. So that might be a good reference document.
And also, just from kind of looking at the surveys, even, it's clear that there's a lot of knowledge and skills in the current standards from the survey that would be essential to retain. I mean, I think, not starting from scratch, basically, doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a lot of good information in the current standards, about diseases and harmful effects of tobacco and alcohol and other drugs. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff in here that you don't just start from scratch. I mean, I think a lot of this can be carried on. The surveys seem to indicate that that a lot of people agree with that.
Yeah, this happened, I think, somewhat organically with the reading language arts. Once they had that general structure, they went to the original standards. But in this case, we can explicitly instruct the first work group to start looking at what of the existing standards should carry over and work with them to figure out how that fits within this new structure.
Dr. Ellis, and then Ms. Hardy.
Monica, this will go back to the question I asked earlier, when a good time to put something like this is in, and I would like to have it in at this point so that all the work groups can have be part of the process of vetting this out, as opposed to us putting it in at first or second amendment. But what Member Cargill was talking about, the Lyme disease, so forth, but to have something such as common conditions, illnesses, and viruses, example, epilepsy and seizure awareness is one I would like to add, change Lyme disease to tick-borne illness, and then West Nile. In the background of this specific one, and I don't even pretend that this is the only important issue, but it's one that's been brought to me. There was Sam's Law that was passed this last session, HB 684 by Representative Clardy and Senator Hughes, and it's based around a Kilgore ISD student, Samantha Watkins, who passed away following a seizure that occurred. She was a soccer player there at Kilgore. And what HB 684 does is require seizure and epilepsy first aid and training for all public school employees. But the idea of adding it here would be, that's requiring it to be taught to the employees. This would be something that would be taught to students in that case. So if there's any nudging of what the work groups, so forth, would work towards, I think that would be important to add also.
Ms. Hardy, and then Ms. Pettis.
I believe Dr. Ellis has already addressed this to a certain extent, but I think having the committee meet, it was just a delight to see these people, and such quality people, that make up that committee, but also that worked so diligently with the task at hand, and the TEA staff that worked with them. Jessica was incredible about helping them and guiding them, but it was their ideas and their thoughts. And I'm not sure that if that were an open meeting, that they would have that good of a rapport with each other and so forth, that there wouldn't have caused a little bit of friction of some sort. I don't know, but this was a very congenial group, and they worked beautifully together, and it just they didn't have to worry about outside forces at hand, and except for Gina and me. But underbelly's it.
We'll keep
Belly's
working on board members as observers. I know you're not used to acting in that role.
Yeah. She wanted to see us keep quiet for a while.
Yeah, exactly. Any other comments that, yes, Ms. Perez, I forgot.
Monica and Shelley, if you would please look at page 3.
Of which document?
The consensus recommendations.
For health or physical education?
Health, please.
Just want to make sure that we do all remember
Yes.
we're also doing PE.
Yes.
So any guidance on PE would be very much appreciated as well.
I believe that page 3 might be the most appropriate place to add this. However, I would also appreciate recommendations from the work groups. However, if we look at recent legislation, we know that the Stop the Bleed requirements now exist, as do TEA grants, to help our districts fund purchasing Stop the Bleed kits or mass blood loss first aid kits. So I would like to see and I'm trying to think of an appropriate way to the more appropriate terminology, but what I'm calling it is gunshot first aid. And I think that it's very appropriate to teach this to high school students. We already have legislation requiring that there is the equipment in strategic locations in our schools. And as we've seen twice in my district, high school students go everywhere, so the education would go with them as well. So I would like to see education around Stop the Bleed for teachers and students, please.
Any other notable things that we'd want staff to pass on? All right, anything else, Monica, on this item?
I think Shelley's got a few additional updates.
Okay, great.
So nothing, no specific instruction on physical education? Okay.
That was a very impressive group as well. I sat in that room for quite a bit, and I was pretty surprised.
So just a few things to wrap up health and physical education. You do have the high-level survey results for both of those surveys. We will be sending out to you, as we've done in the past, the responses that individuals submitted in the survey for the open-ended questions. In the event that you want to be able to work through that information, we've sent it to you electronically in the past, and we'll do that next week as well. And that information is going to be provided next week to the work groups for both health and PE. So shifting gears then, as Monica has mentioned, you're also in the process of reviewing the English Language Proficiency Standards, or the ELPS. And so just to give you a brief update on their work, I think we updated you at your last meeting that in late May, early June, Work Group B met and they looked at models for English proficiency level descriptors. There was not consensus, so we spent about 6 weeks collecting additional feedback. from stakeholders across the state. Then brought in early August, Work Group C, who looked at that information again. There's still additional work to be done on proficiency level descriptors, so we'll be convening another group to give you some more information on that. The documents and the recommendations from both Work Group B and Work Group C for your ELPS work groups is going to be posted to the TEA website tomorrow. We'll be sure to send it to you tonight so you have access to that. And they, like the health and PE work groups, they're convening next week. So we'll have, I think for the first time in my memory, 3 work groups happening pretty much all at the same time next Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And their charge is to be looking at the next section of the ELPS, which are the cross-curricular standards. And then the last thing I want to mention is a reminder to you is in terms of applications. So Jessica has applications for you as you're used to at these meetings. You'll get your folder with applications. They are color-coded because you have 3 different groups going on at the same time. So you'll notice different colors for health, for physical education, and for ELPS. Some of you approved electronically your applications but did not sign, so you'll see a little white note at the front of your folder if we need a signature from you. And then lastly, related to applications, as Monica mentioned, we have not had as robust a response for applications for health and physical education as we have for some of your other subject areas. In particular, if there's anything you can do to encourage educators to apply for these work groups, we would appreciate that. We've reached out to professional organizations and sent out several messages, but I don't think it hurts to remind folks too many times that the opportunity is available.
Yes, Mr. Cortez.
Could you send us that link again?
Yes, sir, we'd
And
be
the
happy to.
specific areas, and I'll resend it to my superintendent again.
Yes, sir.
Did all the members get the information that I sent out that you could just copy and paste into an email that had to do with the application, applying to be on the health committee and applying to be on the PE committees, work committees? I had it was all linked and everything, and all you had to do, you get it? Oh, I don't know when I did it. It's been after you told me. After the content advisors meeting is when I did it. Yeah, it's probably about 2 weeks ago. I can resend that. I'll send it to you today so that you'll have it and you know you're going to get it from me. I'll send it to you today to make sure and send it out. One thing I did want to say is, to me, it's the same. I'm looking at this survey. We didn't have anything for PE, but we do have something. I mean, use the current standards and then the same work that we would have the health standards do too. Like, don't start from scratch, because there's a lot of good stuff according to the survey that they would want to, and they're familiar with it. That's the thing that I like about starting from where we are now. Was there anything else, members? Hearing none. Did you guys have anything else? All right.
I think that's it.
Okay. And we don't have any pending litigation to discuss?
No pending litigation.
No pending litigation. All right, members, thank you for a good meeting, and the meeting is adjourned.